Hello and welcome back to Body in the City. My name is Jasmine, and today I have a really amazing guest with me today, Dr. Amanda Chisholm. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well.
Yeah,
really well. Having a great weekend and excited to be here.
You've been busy.
I have been busy.
Where have you just come from?
So I was exhibiting at the UK Black Business Show, London Excel, yesterday. Incredible day, intense day. Exhausting day, but I've had a good night's sleep and I'm ready to talk today.
Ready to go?
Yeah,
I'm really excited to have you here. I know you've had a very long weekend, so thank you for joining us nice and early today.
Thank you for joining me early.
I mean, we're early risers, you know, as mums have to be. But thank you. So as you know, I like to introduce our guests with a little bit of an excerpt I put together. So I'll go ahead. So we're introducing you as the Dr. Amanda Chisholm, and you are a medical doctor who's been in the medical field since 2010.
Yes.
Right? But you're more than just a GP, which is why I called you to come to here, because I've been to many GPs and they're not fun. You, on the other hand, are beautiful, you're knowledgeable, and you believe that wellness is at the core of everything that you do.
Oh, thank you.
So
yes.
Thank you for coming. But so, as I've mentioned, you're also into lifestyle, medicine and health coaching. You're an advocate for holistic health, and you're balancing roles as a doctor, entrepreneur, wife, all the above, wearing many hats. And you're here and you're all about empowering people to take control of their health and to share your insights on stress, self-care, finding balance in our busy lives.
Yes, that sounds about right.
That's about right.
Sounds a
Let's
bit busy.
dive in. So, tell us, in a nutshell, what do you do?
What do I do? In a nutshell, that's a hard one. I do a lot of things, but in essence, I'm really passionate about health and about well-being. And I really want people to have long lives, that are healthy lives, that are independent lives. I know that people go through a lot of different traumas, and I know that there's so much information out there on how to be your best you. And so what I do is I try and go on journeys with people to improve their health, to improve their outcomes, and to reach their wellness potentials. I do that as working as a GP, as you said, and in the NHS and privately. But also I do a lot of lifestyle medicine, which is actually hacking your day-to-day habits, the small things that you don't realise make such a big difference. And so I do that. And then, you know, I look after my family. I'm a wife, I'm a mom. I'm in church, I'm a Christian. And so lots of things, but the nutshell of it is that I try and go on journeys with people to get them understanding wellness and get them to their best self.
Amazing. I wish more doctors look like you, because I'd actually book an appointment and probably listen. But I know you mentioned that obviously you like this holistic approach and not just a traditional GP in and out kind of practitioner.
Yeah.
What led you to go down the more holistic route? What was it that was that turning point that, hold on a minute, there's more to this than just prescribing something for the symptom? What led you to the more holistic approach?
I have to take you back a little bit, if that's okay.
For sure.
So as I said, I'm a Christian. I'm a Seventh-day Adventist Christian. And part of that, one of our big ministries is something called the Health Message, where we talk a lot about what you eat, how you move, your emotional well-being, how that's so important.
Yeah.
And the things that God has put place in the world, the plants, the fruits, the vegetables, everything that's there, and what we can do to really nourish our bodies and the gifts that God's given us. It's a big part of our ministry. And so growing up with that kind of information, I also come from a Caribbean background as well, where a lot of us came to the UK in the Windrush generation and became nurses. My mom's a nurse and my grandma's a nurse, my aunt's are nurses. And so the healthcare and caring field and also this health message that I grew up with, they all kind of like collided together. And I said, I want to be a doctor. And so I went to med school and I did all my training after med school. And I found that it was so much about illness. I was like, oh, I came here to help people. And you do help people because, you know, lots of people are sick. But I really wanted more things about health. But it was all about pathology and illness and how to treat diseases and not how to take you past disease to wellness, but just getting you to curing a disease. And then it was kind of left there. And I felt this real battle within me that I was seeing so many people that were struggling with lifestyle related illnesses. and habit-related illnesses, but I was only giving them solutions with medications, really. And that was the tools that I was given. And so I had this like real battle within me. And so I went into general practice because I thought, oh, this is more like preventative. It's in the community, out of the hospitals. It was still kind of the same thing, really. And then I still was trying to look into how can I meet these lifestyle issues. And I realized that although I'd been through medical school for 5 years, I'd been training for 5 years outside of that, I didn't have the knowledge that I needed to really explain, talk to people about their diet and their exercise. And so I started talking about how I really wanted to learn that a bit more. And I got introduced to something called lifestyle medicine. Started discussing that with my colleagues and was given a lot of pushback. The communities here, they don't care about that. They're not going to exercise more. They're not going to stop smoking. Just they want the medication. That's all they need.
It's interesting though. Why? Sorry to cut you, but what led them to make the decision? Just a one blanket rule. They don't want this. They don't want this. Yeah. I mean, how can they just make that assumption?
That's the thing. It's a good question, isn't it? Because there hadn't been much opportunity. They might be saying that, you'd have someone come in that's diabetic and say, you need to sort your diet out or you need to lose some weight, but they weren't giving them the tools to do that.
Right.
And because patients weren't going away and doing what they were told, they assumed that it's just because they're not interested. Whereas it was really because we weren't given the tools.
Yeah.
And I think it's also because the way that we're trained as well. We don't have a big... we understand the risk factors, but we aren't given the tools to then educate our patients. And so this all happened. And then I had my first child. And I had my first child December 2019. And we all know what happened in 2020.
Oh, God, don't even say the words.
And so during the unmentionable and lockdown and things, there was lots of things that happened about like health disparities and about like health inequalities in the ethnic minority communities, especially the Black communities, and all those conversations that I was having before I went to maternity leave about bringing lifestyle into medicine. I was getting a lot of, and they kind of collided together. I was like, why do people think that these communities aren't interested in this? And I realized that these communities were actually ones that were heavily ethnic minorities, and the areas they were saying that would be interested were white communities. And so I kind of got within me that I needed to do something more. And so I jumped on social media and I started educating the knowledge that I knew about lifestyle medicine. I then went through a bit of a traumatic episode with my second child where I thought I was actually going to leave general practice. And I said, I'm doing a bit of online stuff. I'm doing a bit on social media, but I still want to know more. And now I feel like I need to have a new career as well, because I don't know if I'm going to do general practice anymore. And so whilst I was on maternity leave, breastfeeding and sleepless nights, I started studying and I did the international board certification of lifestyle medicine, which is a specialty in itself. It's evidence-based, science-backed. There's lots of studies behind it. There are now over 8,000 practitioners in Europe, which is really, really tiny. If you think about the whole of Europe, there's not enough of us. But I studied that, and at the end of 2022, I became qualified in lifestyle medicine, and I didn't go back into general practice, but now that's kind of what led me to different lens. And now I'm the crunchy GP. I found a practice that allows me to be crunchy. And so I like to share with my patients about how their lifestyle habits can really influence whether they have a long, healthy life or a long life with disability or a short life. I educate them about that. And honestly, when you've gone through a traumatic experience, I spoke about when I had my second child, it was a bit traumatic, or very traumatic. When I went through that, it kind of opened up a whole new world to me. And so I understood how important wellness was for myself, for my family, for my patients, but also what life is going to look like for me now. And so I'm kind of a blank canvas at the moment, just trying to figure it out. But that's kind of what led me to this.
Led you. That's really impressive. I know you mentioned a lot about when you're going through your studies, how you was taught to be what sounds like reactive. So you're reacting to an illness, you're help diagnosing, and the aim is to cure that disease. Do you think much of your study is prevention based? Like, where does the prevention come into that? Or is that more leaning towards the lifestyle medicine?
Yeah, so no, a lot of it is about disease, understanding disease. As part of studying about diseases, you learn about risk factors.
Okay.
And so you understand that the risks that are associated with many things like diabetes, high blood pressure, heart attacks, cancers, you realise that a lot of it is lifestyle and a lot of it can be prevented. But we're not given the tools to actually implement it and help our patients to implement it. So we're told like smoking will do this. We're not trained on how to help someone stop smoking.
Yeah.
We're trained on, obesity is linked to all these diseases, but we're not trained on how do we help someone who's obese to not be obese.
Of course.
We're not given those tools. And so prevention is very important. You ask any doctor, they know it's important. They want to, we do a lot of screening programs here in the UK trying to prevent disease or catch disease early. But the translation to understanding that prevention is important to actually giving us the skills to implement those.
Yeah, it's different.
That's the gap.
Yeah.
And that's where lifestyle medicine did it for me.
Nice. So is there a big difference between lifestyle medicine and conventional medicine, or are you finding it easy to merge the two in practice?
I find it so easy to manage the two. So easy. And it's actually, I always tell my colleagues, so I'm trying to get more and more doctors into lifestyle medicine, that it gives you more tools. So a lot of the problem is in GP, and I can only talk about GP now, I guess, because that's the area that I'm in, is that you'll have patients come to you with all these problems, and a lot of them are like stress related, lifestyle related, and you don't have the answers for them, or you don't feel like you've got enough to give them in terms of what's going to help. Someone comes into you that's anxious, and you know that the medication that you can offer only does so much. There's risks that come with it and side effects, and we always talk about having multiple medications that interact in the problems, but a lot of us didn't have solutions. And I remember before I qualified in lifestyle medicine feeling at a loss, that patients were coming to me and they weren't really getting anywhere, and I was and all I could really offer them was some medicine or tell them to lose weight, but not many tools. Now my consultations, I've got so much to give. I have a patient that comes to me about anxiety, and I can talk to them about breath work and explain to them how when you're in this stressful situation, if you can take control of your breath, you can reduce your stress levels. You can switch on from your stress response in your nervous system to your more your rest and digest response. I can explain to someone who's got IBS and gut issues that yes, there's some medicines that might help with it, but also have you looked into looking after your gut health? Do you know about fermented foods? Do you know about prebiotics and probiotics? So I can share those things and I can give them practical steps. And the amazing thing is that you see some people who you feel aren't motivated to do something, but a lot of the time it's because they don't think there's anything they can do. When I empower patients, I say to them, actually, if you did this with your diet, if you learn how to sleep better, or try this mindfulness, or people come to me and I prescribe them journaling, I prescribe them mindfulness, I prescribe them walks outside. Literally, this is what I do in my clinic. They suddenly like, there's things that I can do. You're not just going to tell me to take a tablet. And those people that you thought weren't motivated or weren't the right people,
all of a sudden become motivated, right?
Exactly. And so it's the job satisfaction that I get now compared to before, worlds apart.
Wow.
Yeah, worlds apart, because it's not just me writing sick notes and giving out medicines or saying lose some weight, nothing else I can do.
And I also feel like that's a lot of the problem, especially with, I'd say, like our generation, even our parent generation, especially the older generation who don't like go into the doctor, especially in the Caribbean. I can say that from the Caribbean perspective. They avoid going for checkups, men especially. And I believe a lot of it is because they don't think they're going to get any other advice other than take this medication, take this pill. And that's going to mask the symptoms, but they know deep down it's not going to help them. Whereas what you're doing is so impactful, because you're going into a room and you're looking at that person as an individual and seeing past your prescription pad and what it is that you can just, okay, take this and leave me. I've only got 9 minutes for your session, 10 minutes for your session. Talking about stress, which is so important for people's overall mental, physical well-being. What advice would you have, just off the bat, very easy, simple advice, would you give to somebody to help manage their stress levels? I know we touched on like rest and digest, so like, the parasympathetic system and how to like neutralize that. What everyday techniques, or what would you advise to someone who came to your office for an appointment and just said, I'm overwhelmed, I've got stress, how can I manage this without having to take tablets?
Okay. So there's twofold. I think, first of all, excellent question. Like, such an important area, stress. And we don't always understand the impacts that stress has on our bodies, not just on our minds.
Yeah.
And it's really twofold. You've got to look at where the root cause of the stress is coming from.
Right.
And so sometimes you need to have a bit of an overhaul, like I had to have with my own life as well, an overhaul and looking at what you're doing. And capacity is a massive thing.
Right.
Some people don't understand that your capacity can be different to other people's, and will try to achieve or mimic what other people are doing and becoming stressed because they're not understanding why it's not working for them.
Right.
And so capacity is a big thing, and I can talk a bit more about that. But in terms of what you asked, what everyday things you can do, stress isn't terrible. Stress isn't, this big bad monster.
Yeah.
Because our body is really well equipped at dealing with stress. You talked about the parasympathetic nervous system. Basically, we have an automatic nervous system called the autonomic nervous system, where there are two sides to it. And it's called the automatic nervous system because it's the things in our body, the things that our body does that we don't need to have control of.
Heartbeat, breathing,
releasing hormones. Imagine you had to think about these things, we'd just all be dead.
Yeah.
But luckily, our body actually takes care of that itself.
Yeah.
And so we want to be in the rest and digest, the parasympathetic nerve system side of it most of the time. It means that our body can be in homeostasis. It means that we can be in balance. We can release the hormones that we need to. We can digest our food happily.
Yeah.
But then in a stress situation, we have an excellent system called the sympathetic nerve system, or the fight or flight. Yeah. And that's basically where a cascade of hormones happen. Our blood flow changes. It goes to our brain and our muscles that we can take action and either fight a situation or we can flee from it.
Yeah.
And so it's really important for us to do that. It's a great system. But the problem is in modern day society, the threats that cause our stress response to happen aren't physical, real threats.
Okay.
There are a lot of emotional things like worrying about work or a conversation you've had with somebody. Our bodies is trying to deal with something that they need to flee or fight from. But the same, that's what it's actually getting ready for.
Yeah.
The problem is our brain can't distinguish between like psychological stress and physical stress. Yeah. And so when that response keeps happening where our hormones are cascading, we get gut issues because the blood flow is going away from our gut.
Yeah.
And so you can end up with like lots of GI complaints or gastric complaints. Also, our stress hormones, one in particular called cortisol, which can push up our sugars, and so you start having problems with like blood sugar balancing
and losing weight.
Yeah. All of those issues.
I didn't realise that. Someone mentioned that it can be really difficult to lose belly fat if your cortisol levels are really high.
Absolutely.
I didn't even know the two could be linked.
Yes, and so cortisol, we need it to wake up in the morning. So cortisol is really important. If your cortisol levels are too low, there's a whole disease that comes from that, something called Addison's disease, and it's something we need stress levels, we need cortisol in our body. It helps us to wake up in the morning, but too much of it can exactly what we talked about, problems with weight loss, problems with sleeping, problems with anxiety. But the thing is, we need to teach our brains to understand what is real stress. So what things do we actually take action from?
Yeah.
Yes, if you're preparing for an exam, sometimes you need to be more alert, and so that little bit of stress is fine. If you're doing some exercise, running a race, you need that adrenaline pump. You've got something quick to do. But if it's those everyday little things that are causing you stress, you don't need that response. So you need to train your brain there. But the whole thing about what you can do every day is really trying to take yourself from being in that stress position to being into the rest and digest. And there's lots of ways that you can hack your body to take you from your stress response into the rest and digest. And one of them that I love is your breath, doing breath work. So we talked about the autonomic nervous system, and what that does is these automatic things that your body does, breathing, heart rate.
Yeah.
But your breathing is actually really special because you can control it, and you also don't have to control it, if that makes sense. So you can decide, I'm going to take a deep breath in. You can decide to do that.
Yeah.
Or if you don't think about it at all, you still keep breathing. So it's this thing where it's got two elements to it. And we know that when you take a breath in, it increases it puts you into the stress response. So it switches on that sympathetic nervous system. And when you take a breath out, it switches on the parasympathetic nervous system. And so simple hacks are these breathwork exercises. You can look online and you can see lots of different ways of doing it.
Yeah.
But one small thing is that when you're feeling stressed, taking a shorter in-breath and a longer out breath and controlling that breathing can switch you over quite quickly from the stress response into the rest and digest response.
Noted. I like that
and
one.
So there's all these little hacks.
Yeah.
And I could go through loads and loads and loads, but there's lots of things for us to talk about.
So breathwork we should be focusing our attention on.
Breathwork, yes. Breathwork for those stress situations. It helps you to take that beat, helps you to go into that rest and digest, and then for you to decide, is this a situation that I need to be running or fighting from? Or if there's something else going on here.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing that you can do each day when you're feeling a bit stressed, to bring you back into that.
It's really interesting because a lot of people, they thrive in stressful situations, and then they have this like turning point where their body falls into illness or something happens catastrophic, because I'm guessing that's your body going, okay, enough's enough. In everyday situations, like just managing children, for example, or work or relationships or all these types of things, would you still give the same advice, like just manage your breath and focus on your breath work? Or are there even more tools that can help you? Or better still, what would be your turning point? When would you advise somebody to go and seek help and look into getting some form of medication if they're practicing their breath work, they're doing all the things you recommend, and there's still no change?
Yeah, so in those stress situations that you spoke about, children, work, often more things are needed. And sometimes, you know, those little bits, if you've got a partner there with you, with the children, having things like a tap out.
Okay.
And knowing that when I'm getting to a certain point, let me tap out. Or even having a place that you can go to, putting the children in a safe area. You know, sometimes you've got a little baby and they're crying a lot and you'll find yourself getting really built up.
Yeah.
It's okay to put them in the cot and let them cry for a few minutes. Especially if you're getting worked up, and just stepping into the bathroom, looking in the mirror and watching yourself breathe for a little bit before going back to it.
Yeah.
It's okay to do those things. And we feel like sometimes we're traumatizing the child by letting them cry or something. But if you're in a situation where you can't gather yourself, you can't be helpful. Yeah. Exactly. And so there's lots of different ways to do it. Some things that are really important is understanding yourself. So going to therapy is one thing to try and like unpick where all this anxiety has come from. But also sometimes it can be very difficult to access therapy. But something that can help is journaling.
Right.
It's like having a conversation with yourself. Sometimes we don't take the time to ask those questions or to really unpick what's going on in our brain.
Right.
But sometimes even just having a brain dump and just writing down everything that's on your mind and seeing it there on paper and being able to make some sense of it, because a lot of us are very sensible and we are able to help ourselves in that way. So things like that can help. But for too many people, it's back to that thing of capacity.
Yeah.
And too many of us are looking for these short solutions when actually we need to look at what we're doing overall with our life.
Yes.
There's this thing called the bottle analogy that I give for like
bottle analogy.
The bottle analogy. Okay. Can I share it?
Go for it.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
So imagine you are a plastic bottle.
Can I be a glass bottle?
No, when you hear what you're going to have to do to the bottle, you're going to
save the environment, you know.
Yes, no, I know. But when you hear what you're going to do to the bottle, you'll realise why that's a bit dangerous.
Okay.
But say you're a plastic bottle.
Yeah.
Everyone, first of all, has different shaped bottles. Some people have a 2-litre bottle. Some people have a 1-litre bottle. Some people have, you know, a really fancy round bottle. Some people have like straight bottles. They're all different capacities.
Right.
Now, in that bottle, you fill it with water. And water is all the things that you've got to do. And so if you fill it as your baseline right up to the top, that means if something else comes along, whether it's like a little bit of a job deadline, or it's a crying baby, or a baby that's not sleeping, or it's a bit of turmoil in your relationship, or it's some grief, or things that we can't avoid, you add a bit of water to that and you bubble over. And so the first thing is, never have your bottle at full capacity.
Okay.
You want to leave some space there. And sometimes we feel like in this hustle culture that we need to always have like, you know, be full to the brim. But it's okay. Leave yourself some space, some time. A little bit of
contingency.
Yeah. And so that's the first thing. Now, the next thing is that the bottle isn't just filled with water. Sometimes what's happened in our past can be rocks in our bottle, which change our capacity. Maybe it's a trauma that you've had. Maybe it's some childhood issues, you know, neglect, abuse that you may have suffered from. Maybe it's a traumatic experience when you got older. Maybe it was losing someone really close to you, but it's changed you, and it means that your capacity is different. So although I have this 2-litre bottle and my friend has a 2-litre bottle, I've gone through some traumas. There's now some rocks in there.
Right.
So if I put the same amount of water in my bottle that she has in her bottle,
it's going to overflow.
Then it's going to overflow.
Yeah.
And so I need it back at that 80%. So I need to do a little bit less things. And it's okay that looking at me, you might think we look the same. Yeah. But actually my capacity is a bit different.
Wow.
Okay. Now, the next thing as well is that lots of things will come in anyway. And sometimes we can be doing bad habits that can change our capacity. Maybe it's drinking too much alcohol. Maybe it's not getting enough sleep. Maybe it's being in toxic relationships. And those are things that can change, but they take work. And they're like putting dirt into your bottle.
Right.
And so it also takes up space there as well.
Okay.
And so you know that your capacity is different because you're not doing things to actually take care of yourself. Now, sometimes, no matter what, even if you've got 80%, even if you've taken all those factors in and you've got 80%, something big can come along and pour loads of water in and overflow it.
Yeah.
And so the trick then is to try and make sure that your bottle never gets full. And the way that we do that is by poking holes into the bottle. And this is why we can't be glass, because danger. And poking holes into the bottle are things to relieve stress.
Okay.
And that may be exercising, it may be yoga, it may be hiking.
Such a good analogy, isn't it? I'm like visualizing it as you say.
Yeah, and so you see it there. It's all of those things. It may be, so poking those holes, it may be journaling, it may be going to therapy, eating well, nourishing your body, sleeping at nighttime, all of those things. And as you add those holes, you'll notice that even as things come in, because I've got those healthy habits, things can also come out. Yeah. And then there's also the thing is you can actually clear up the bottle too. It's hard sometimes to get dirt out of the bottle. We know the rocks can't leave, but getting the dirt out of the bottle, you can start changing some of your behaviours by adding more good things into it and clearing that water up. And that's kind of the bottle analogy. And so it's a big thing, and when it comes to, it's a lot of work.
I love it.
But you've got to find ways, how can you poke the holes in? So the first question is there too much water in my bottle? Have I acknowledged the rocks that are in my bottle?
Yes, there is too much holes in it. Let's talk to me.
Yeah, so
yes, there is too much water in my bottle.
Is there too much water in your bottle?
Yes, there is, Dr. Amanda.
Okay, so what can we do? So how can
poke many holes in the bottom?
Yes, so we need to poke some holes in the bottle. And then long term, figure out how we can take some water out of the bottle.
So if I poke a hole in my bottle to get better sleep, I'm going to poke a hole in my bottle to formulate some form of routine in my life. I'm going to poke a hole in my bottle to exercise more. I'm going to poke a hole in my bottle to...
Social connections, friends, family.
Yeah, exercise more, social connections, family. I love this analogy so much.
So we're doing that. And then sometimes you're like, I'm still doing that, but I've still got a lot of water going in there. And sometimes that's when you have to make big decisions and big changes. For me, that was like looking at career. Okay. What am I doing with my work? Yeah. And sometimes that can be a big change to pour some water out of your bottle like that. But it's something that you can have goals towards and think about. And then also you think about how much dirt is in my bottle. Right. Are there some behaviours that I'm doing that are actually hindering me? Are there some relationships that I need to have better boundaries with because they're hindering me? Yeah. Is it that I really like to stay up late and eat chocolate because it makes me feel more comfortable?
Is that personal? I feel like you're attacking me right now.
No, it wasn't personal at all. But is that hindering me? Yeah. And so you've got to then start thinking about how can I clear up the dirt? How can I lessen the water? And so it's a journey. Of course. But everything is, I always say there's no easy decision. There's a hard decision now, which then makes things easy in the future. So you look after yourself now and you'll find that as life is going on, I'm really thriving. Or you do the easy things now, but then when you get into the future, you're struggling with the impact of those easy things. And it's a hard life. So.
And I guess as well, many people who can relate to this bottle analogy are... say they're entering into a time into their lives where they've got more responsibility. They might have children, they might have bigger roles, whatever they're working on, but they haven't quite realised that they've got now rocks and more things going in. So they're thinking, but hold on, this time last year I was optimal and I could handle way more stress, and my bottle wasn't overflowing at this point. And I find that it can be difficult for people to transition into this new area of their lives where they've got this new responsibility and they need to readjust. What key signs can people look out for, apart from the obvious, or prepare themselves if they're entering a new chapter into their lives where they're going to have more rocks or more flow going into their bottle? What can they look out for? How can they prepare for the change?
And so it's often quite individual, but there are some signs. So say that you're finding that things that you used to really enjoy and used to really give you like that, I don't know, that oomph, and you used to have like the sparkle in your eye when you talk about it, they're now you're putting it to the side. Yeah, that's one of the first things. Those extracurricular things, the things that kind of make you you.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't have time for it, or I'm not enjoying it as much.
Yeah.
Enjoyment is a really big one. It's actually something called hedonia. And so when you're lacking enjoyment in things that you used to enjoy, it's called anhedonia. And if you look over like a 2-week period, if you find that more than half the time, you're either putting things to the side that you used to really enjoy doing, or you're finding very like, you're feeling meh about those things, then that's a sign that you may be getting quite overwhelmed.
Okay.
So that's one thing. Also, appetite and sleep, some of the carnal things that we do are some of the first things that can start to waver. So sometimes having a bit of trouble falling asleep, or waking up quite early in the morning, or sleeping too much even. Changes with your sleep is a really big sign that there's a big shift happening, and that you may need some additional help. You may need to shift things. And then also with your appetite as well. And people go either way. Sometimes it's more comfort eating. Sometimes it's like really losing your appetite. Yeah. But those kind of 3 areas, your enjoyment of things, your appetite, your sleep, are often some of the first things to
Key
start
signs.
changing.
Wow.
Yeah.
You often speak about the importance of understanding stress and its overall health impact. Can you explain, I mean, you've already explained, but why it's so crucial in disease prevention?
Yes, because chronic stress often leads to something called inflammation. And inflammation is the cornerstone to so many diseases. When we look at infections, there's inflammation that goes along with it. When we look at autoimmune disease and our immune system, autoimmune disease is where your body that usually fights infection, they start to fight your own cells.
Okay.
And so when your immune system is triggered like that, it's often because they're seeing some inflammation there in the body. When we look at metabolic diseases, which are things like diabetes and blood sugar issues and heart disease, that often as well, inflammation is there.
Okay.
And when it comes to stress, although we often think about it as a very emotional or mental issue, it changes so much. It changes the hormone levels.
Yeah.
And there's actually this thing called your gut microbiome.
Yeah. It's becoming quite popular at the moment. It's like a trend buzzword.
And I know that I'm bringing out lots of lots of different words for you guys. But these are things that you should know. I think everyone should know.
Yeah.
And so your gut microbiome, it's a very big buzz at the moment, as it should be, to be honest.
Good, yeah.
And basically, in our gut in particular, all over our body, we have different organisms. It's not just us that lives with us. We have millions of small organisms like bacteria, viruses, fungi. And although they cause disease if they're in the wrong places or the wrong quantity, when they're in the right balance, they actually help us. We work like a symbiotic relationship, whereas they help to break down things like fibre for us and give us the nutrition from it that we can't do ourselves. They help to communicate between like our brain and our stomach. They do amazing things for us.
You do say the gut is a second brain, don't they?
The gut is incredible. And so when people say follow your gut, I feel like that's where it came from. They may not have understood all those years ago why they were saying that.
There was something
in
it.
They knew that what's happening. And our gut really, there's a few things it doesn't like, and stress is one thing that it really does not like.
Wow.
And so if you're in high stress situations, your gut can be off, and that's the connection to all of our body. And so it's a big impact.
It's a very big one.
It's a big one, and it's okay to have little bits of stress, but we've got to know how to move away from it.
To manage it as well, because it can have these long lasting implications to our health overall. Now, it's really interesting. You balance, I know, multiple roles. You wear many hats.
Yes.
Which is impressive. So you're a doctor, you're an entrepreneur, you're a mum, you're many, many more things. How do you personally maintain your own work-life balance, and what advice would you give to others who are struggling to do the same?
Oh, so applying things that you know can always be hard, can't it?
This is it though. We can like preach, but are we taking our own advice? I'm guilty of this.
Yeah, it's really difficult, especially at this season of life that I'm in. You're on the same spot as well when you've got young children.
Yeah.
Because I feel like every 6 weeks they change. And so I keep trying to make a routine, and then, you know, they get sick, or they decide to, you know, with potty training or something's happening.
Yeah.
And so there's always some kind of flux and change. And so for me, the biggest thing has been boundaries.
Okay.
I used to be someone that was very boundaryless.
People pleaser?
Yes.
Yeah.
Really.
Word.
To pathological degree.
Oh, God.
But yes, a big people pleaser. I've had to really put in boundaries.
Yeah.
And I've had to also, I use a diary, a calendar. And in that diary, I used to just use that to like put on appointments and, you know, when I'm meeting somebody or things I have to do. Now I have to schedule in things for myself. And if it's on the diary, I share it with my husband or share it with whoever's helping me and stick to it.
Okay.
And without doing that, I will just, if I've got like some business things to do and I'm at home and I haven't really scheduled it out, I will end up cleaning the house.
Yeah.
So yes, or I procrastinate because, and it's not procrastination because I don't want to be productive, it's because I've got so many things to do.
Yeah.
And the thing that pops into my head, I'll be like, oh, let me do that. And then something else pop into my head. And so for me, scheduling is really, really important.
And scheduling time for yourself.
Yeah, scheduling in time for me, even if it's the walk or it's like getting up in the morning. And the other thing that's really important is sleep. And those are the two things that I found. If I can make sure that I've scheduled things into my diary and also I'm sleeping, and it's hard when the kids sometimes, but going to bed early enough, I'm so guilty of, you know, the kids go to bed finally and you're like, binge
Grey's Anatomy.
It's my time. But no, just saying no to myself and instead get up early in the morning.
Okay.
And so being an early riser, getting sleep in, has really helped me to balance things and having a diary. And then for me, it's therapy.
Amazing.
I needed some accountability. And I started therapy 2 years ago. Yeah, it's 2024, so 2 years ago, almost exactly 2 years ago. And I've tried having little breaks from it and I always end up back because there's something about therapy, having somebody that is an hour where it's just about you. And she doesn't like, even if I ask her about her day or how she is, she's like,
this is not about
anyway,
me.
It's not about that.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. At first I used to feel a bit rude. She's like, so how are things? I'm like, blah, 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 blah. How are you? She's like, no, this isn't what we're doing here. And so having that uninterrupted, unbiased time for somebody who wasn't in my life, and wasn't maybe able to explain things away or wasn't invested in it that way, but just wanted to give me some tools, that has been game changing for me. Amazing. Therapy has been so important.
I believe that therapy is useful for everyone. I know there is a little bit of a stigma, especially in the Black community, around therapy and its benefits. And I would say, I mean, I've tried therapy with different people and I stuck with one lady and she was amazing. And similar to your experience, speaking to someone that was unbiased, didn't know you and was just there just to listen to you, it felt very similar to journaling to a degree, because you're speaking, she's note-taking, and what she or he is doing in that time is almost unraveling this ball of yarn of just all your thoughts and trying to make sense of it for you. However, some people that I've spoken to whom tried therapy or haven't tried therapy yet, they're not willing to do it or had their reservations about it. And I've also seen this reported as well somewhere, is that with therapy, it's not just about talking to the therapist and just spilling all of it out. But there's a way to do it that's actually productive for the brain. And I think that not everybody knows how to do therapy correctly. So some people, from friends of mine, have said, oh, I've gone to therapy, you know, like you recommended, and I've sat with her for a few sessions. I've just spoke to her and she's just note taking and she's nodding, and then the session's over and I feel worse when I leave. Why is that? There's a way to do therapy. And also, you're not a therapist, but what tools and techniques would you give somebody so they don't just feel like they're going in there and trauma dumping and coming out now thinking about everything they've said? What's the best approach to therapy to get more people investing in it?
I think it's difficult. So I've had therapy where the therapist I have now is not my first therapist. It's my fourth. My fourth therapist.
So you've gone through a few.
Yes.
You've got to pick the one that's good for you.
That's the thing. And a lot of the time you won't know, because when you go to therapy, you're going, you know, you've never done it before, you're trying it out because someone's mentioned it, you've heard about it online or something like that, someone's had a good experience. But what I would say is you need to do a little bit of work in terms of what are you looking for from a therapist. And you need to sometimes think about your background as well. Not for everybody. I've had two. So I'm a Black Christian British woman.
Right.
I am from a Caribbean background. I have had one therapist who was a Black British Christian woman, and we had a great time. She was my therapist for about a year, and I found it very, very beneficial. But then right now my therapist is a white British woman.
Okay.
And we have some cultural differences, but we also have a lot of similarities in terms of the places that we work, in terms of our children, and in terms of the expectations of us as children. So there's something that she understands. And so I think when we're going through therapy, we need to find something that we resonate with that therapist.
Okay.
So sometimes you feel like, I don't want to have to spend time explaining the cultural sensitivities or the cultural explanations of what I'm going through.
Yeah, and my experience as a Black woman. Not
I don't
everyone's
want
going
to
understand that.
I don't have to explain that.
Yeah.
And so we look for, for you, it may be really important to look for someone who is a Black woman or a Black man, or someone that looks like you, that can understand that. But sometimes it's very much about the way that you're working, or the way that you were brought up, or somebody helping you that's specialising in trauma, or someone that's specialising in anxiety. And so sometimes before you go to therapy, you have to ask yourself those questions.
Okay.
And then once you are in therapy, don't feel as though that therapist has to be the one. I had a therapist that I saw for one session.
Yeah.
And I said, absolutely never again.
What was it that turned you off?
She just made too many assumptions. So I went in there. I started explaining to her what was being happening. And in the first session, she started interrupting me and telling me what I was experiencing.
Okay.
And I was like, but that's not how it is. And you haven't let me speak enough. You haven't let me explain things. But she was making all these conclusions about stuff from not enough information.
Okay.
And for me, that was not okay. And I like someone to give me feedback. I like a directive approach where people really tell me what their opinions are. And some people want a therapist who just listens and guides them through it. And so sometimes you only learn that as you go through.
Okay.
But if you get a bad experience from it, or you leave therapy feeling bad, either go to your next therapy session and say to them, I didn't like this about the therapy, or I didn't like that. Or even ask the therapist, do you feel as though, the good therapists that I've had, they've always said to me, are you happy with how things are going? Do you feel as though you need something different? And they also recommend other therapists as well if they don't feel like they can help you.
That's really
important. That's a sign of a good therapist.
Yeah.
And so when I go into therapy now, I taught them about the actual experience of the therapy too. And so because I didn't like it, I didn't go back to her a second time. I decided that I wasn't even, for me, I like to be able to get my point across. I want people to understand the full context and then start giving me some, pointers.
Right.
And so I didn't like that. As I was talking to her, within 5 minutes, she was telling me conclusions about it. And so it'll be individual how it helps you. But I think, first of all, just understanding that before you go to therapy, you should have something in mind of what you're trying to achieve. Yeah. Even if it's just to understand yourself more, but you should have something in mind. And then when you go to the therapist, you should talk to them about how you're finding the therapy, not just about you. And then if you don't like them, you should move on.
Good. Very good advice. Yeah. Thank you. And then going back to, I know your focus right now is lifestyle medicine. And you've got a passion for health education. And I know that you're currently doing some one-to-ones, you're doing courses. Tell me more about those things.
Yeah, so at the moment, I'm still seeing patients one-to-one in my GP clinics, and I do a lot of lifestyle medicine throughout those appointments. Yeah. But I started to find that there was too much information. There was not enough time. There was too many people. Yeah. And I went on social media first, but social media, as much as I love it, it's very short form content, and there isn't enough space for the nuances and there's a lot of caveats you've got to give when you're giving health information. Yeah. There's a lot of detail to it, and I felt that there wasn't enough time. And that's why I love things like podcasts and YouTube and stuff like that, because you have more conversation. Yeah. But still, I needed something else to give the information. And so I created an online course. Which is my little baby at the moment, my third child. I birthed her. I wrote every single word of that myself. I sat there scripting it and researching it myself. And I've created what I think is a really high quality lifestyle medicine course that is aimed at the public. It goes into the science behind why I say to do the things that to do. But it also gives you lots of practical tips and things that you can implement today to try and just make you a better, bring you more wellness. That's the aim of it, really. It can help to reverse chronic diseases. It can help to prevent diseases. And in it, I've put lots of things like, recipes and workouts. And I sit with therapists and I sit with nutritionists and try to give it as much as possible. But that's my little baby at the moment.
I'm excited to see more about it. I went on your website.
Thank
I know you've
you.
been in a Black Business Show yesterday.
Yes.
So do check out Amanda's website for more details on her one-to-one courses and her online course. And I just want to touch on very quickly, because I know we haven't really mentioned it, is food.
Yeah.
Because I feel like food is so important just for obviously overall health and well-being. And it's become much more popular in terms of conversation, talk points on how the food is impacting our gut health, how it's impacting our emotional well-being, and just our overall health in general. Just touching on health as a GP, what advice do you give for people for foods that they should and shouldn't be eating, particularly in the Caribbean community, because we can have quite high starchy foods, and obviously we love our foods, don't get me wrong, but it can be a real battle sometimes to kind of teach and educate our elders into eating healthier to prevent disease. What advice would you give?
I think there's too many specific advices about diet out there. Keto, paleo, carnivalism, veganism, all of that stuff. There's different ways of doing it, but there's this food author actually called Michael Pollan, and he said this sentence that I tell people all the time, and this is what you should do. It's very simple.
Go for it.
Eat food, not too much, and mostly plants. So eat food, real food, food that is less processed. The problem that we have at the moment is this ultra processed foods. And when we think about what are processed for the food, if you pick it and you eat it, you've not done anything to it. If you then pick it and you stew it down, then you've done something to it, but it's a simple process, and that's fine. The more and more you do to it, and the less it looks like its original form, the more processed it is. And so when you're going to the shop and you're buying some, like, I don't know, it's called like an apple biscuit or something like that, there's so much process to it, you probably couldn't say how it became that. Or you go and buy some, I don't know, salt and vinegar crisp or some cheesy Whatsits, and you think, how do they create this? It's like, that's when you say it's ultra processed. If you can't really explain the process of how it came to be, that's ultra processed food. You know, you got a strawberry lollipop and you think, how did the strawberry even get involved in this?
There's no strawberry in this.
So eat food, eat whole foods. Try and eat the whole thing. So when you're eating grains, and so talking about starchy foods in our, our culture and things, it's fine to eat starchy things. It's fine to, I don't have any problem with carbohydrates. But when you choose them, choose the whole grain, eat the brown bread, eat the brown rice, eat the brown pasta, and get the whole grain from it, because there's more fibre in that, and fibre is magic. And so that's one thing. Eat foods, whole foods, real foods. The next thing is not too much. Portion
size.
And I think that's one thing that's an issue, is that we sometimes don't eat things in the right balance. The things for me to prioritize are plants and protein, and so make sure when you're looking at your plate, in each meal you've got plants and protein. Now it's fine to have your starches as well, but have that as a lesser degree. And so it may be about having a quarter of your plate that's actually made up of the starchy things, and make sure those starchy things are whole grains, and then half of your plate are the plants and the fresh things like that, and then another quarter being the protein, actually making sure that we're getting protein, because that's the building blocks to all the cells in our body. And then the last thing is mostly plants, and that's because I know there's people out there that have the carnivore diet, and I'm not saying that you need to be a vegan, but I'm saying that you need to have a predominantly plant-based diet. And plants are everything. Plants are fruits, vegetables, but it's also herbs and spices, teas, really trying to get in those different plants, because they have these amazing things called phytochemicals, and the nutrition that you get from it, the antioxidants that you get from it, the plants are healing. Most of our medications that we've got have been derived from plants. And so, eat plants, not too much, and eat food, real food. That's my thing.
Thank you. And what would you say is the most rewarding part of your work in lifestyle medicine, and where do you hope to see the field grow in the future?
Oh, the most rewarding thing is just working with people and seeing the changes. It's incredible when you've had someone that's been like unable to leave the house, and just thinks that's it, they're never going to be able to work, and they're in their 20s.
Goodness.
And it's just, there's too many examples like that. And they come back to you and they say, I started journaling, and I started going for a walk each day, and I started doing breath work, and I've been able to catch the bus. And I had a patient last week who's like, she went to Leeds to go and see a friend, and I was like, that's incredible, because she wouldn't even like go down the road.
Wow.
And so seeing things like that, hands down, just seeing the change in people the most important bit. And the people that come back that have researched things, I had one patient came back and I was saying about fermented food. She's like, I've started making sauerkraut at home. I was like, all right then.
I love sauerkraut.
Like, enjoy yourself. I still buy it from the shop, but, you know, do what you want to do. So that's really good. And where do I want the field to go? I just want more people to do it.
Yeah.
I think there are just, like I said, there's only just over 8,000 practitioners in Europe, and there needs to be so many more.
Right.
I would love to see it come into mainstream. And we talk about traditional medicine. There's like different generations of medicine. I think we're moving into this third generation where it's still science-based. We still have medications and surgeries and things that have saved people's lives, but we're also looking at the individual as well. Yeah. And we're kind of trying to help people get back to an older way of living, but in a modern way. So, you know, sleeping when the sun goes down, not constantly consuming information all the time, eating good food, having community together, going for walks, you know, that kind of stuff.
Nice, incredible. I'm really excited to see how it progresses and how it evolves, and I hope that people can visit their local GPs and are met with a conventional side of medicine, but also with a holistic and lifestyle-based form of medication as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I've just got to say as well that the conventional side of medicine definitely has its place. I still prescribe medications every day. And it's because there's some people who are not at the point right now where they can, because to be able to change your lifestyle, it's a really hard thing to do. Yeah. And some people aren't at that point right now. Yeah. And so what do we say? Because you're not ready to do that, we're just going to let your blood pressure be through the roof. No, have some medication. And whilst you're learning the knowledge and trying to implement things, let's actually make sure that we're not destroying your blood vessels as well, and like putting too much strain on your heart. Yeah. And so those things are there. And also, some people do come to like lifestyle medicine a bit too late. Yeah. You know, you've been diabetic for 20 years. Yeah. Even as much as we can try and like improve your diet and your health and things, you may have done some damage to your body. And
it's irreversible now,
you know, so it's just to think about those things. But yes,
it's impressive. And then, do you have any like takeaway points for us? One bits of advice or key points you want to mention?
I guess the biggest thing is to really take time to have a look at your life and don't be afraid to wipe the slate clean and do things that will prioritize your health and your well-being. Yeah. You'll be able to serve people better. And it's a scary thing to do, but it's always worth it if you feel like you're drowning a bit. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah. This felt like a really personal one for me. I'm so glad that you came today. The bottom analogy, everything you said is such key takeaway points. I'm excited to watch it back and just take notes again. So thank you so much for joining me today. In true Body in the City fashion, I'll ask you to read out one of our questions to close our session today. So we have some questions here. You can just pick any of the cards. Okay. That's my rock climbing card. Anyway, you can pick any of the cards here. If you read it out to our audience, and then you can answer the question.
So, what is a dream or aspiration that excites you? Okay. This is interesting because ones that excite me also scare me. They're big. And I guess a dream that I've not shared before publicly, but I have a dream to have my own wellness centre.
Beautiful.
Where I can bring different professionals together and I can do the work, the consultations, and kind of like run my own organisation. That's a big dream that I have, and it excites me. It scares me. I don't know if I'll be able to do it or when or how.
I mean, you've spoken it now, so it's all about speaking it into existence.
That's a dream. I've really enjoyed getting into business recently, and I think I could be a good leader and have a good organisation. So that's one of my dreams.
No, you're incredibly knowledgeable. I've taken away so much from our session today, and I hope that vision comes into fruition. Because I will be your first member.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Oh, it's been lovely talking to you.
It's been incredible. Honestly, I can go on for ages. I really love this topic. I think it's so important that people really have an idea of what they can do to better their health and their lifestyle. And I think you've hit the nail on the head with everything we've discussed today. So thank you so much for joining me today.
And thank you for having me.
And where can people find you?
So I am Life with Dr. Amanda everywhere on Instagram. Actually, LinkedIn, I'm Dr. Amanda Chisholm. But Instagram, my website, Life with Dr. Amanda. YouTube, Life with Dr. Amanda. And I answer messages, DMs, whatever. And
Amazing. I'll be sure to link all of her information below and in the caption. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you so much for joining us on Body in the City. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.